Well, for more than 3 decades, Jim Lang has been one of Canada's most recognizable voices in broadcasting. From covering Super Bowls, Stanley Cup finals, and Olympic events to hosting radio and television programs across the country, he's built a reputation as a gifted storyteller and interviewer. But beyond the microphone, Jim has also become one of Canada's most successful co-authors, helping some of the biggest names in sports share their stories through best-selling books. His latest project teams him up with legendary broadcaster Rod Black, offering readers a behind-the-scenes look at a remarkable career in Canadian sports media. And today we'll talk with Jim. Well, here we are, Jim.
Hi, Mike.
Well, this feels a little awkward only because I spend every day with you.
Pretty much, right.
And but it's a real opportunity to sit down. As I said in the intro, you are iconic in broadcasting, which is the world I come from. And you've made the crossover into many places. I mean, from radio to television, from television to author.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back a little bit in time. You weren't even born in this country, were you?
No, actually, my father was in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and he was stationed in Europe. And in the time of the 60s, NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, had a huge military presence in Europe because there was a real fear that Russia, the USSR, and the Warsaw Pact were going to walk right through to the English Channel. So I was born in France, and then we lived in Belgium and Germany before I moved to Canada. And so that was, I mean, they had some U.S. military bases in Europe at the time with over 100,000 personnel on one base.
So you're an infant at that point now, but you how do you end up, where do you end up traveling with your dad's military career?
We ended up going to CFB Trenton, Ontario.
Yeah.
And then my father was handpicked by a group of other, my dad was an aircraft engine mechanic.
I was gonna ask, yeah.
And so Canada bought the CP-140 Aurora, which was a maritime surveillance patrol plane. Now, we moved to Burbank, California in the summer of 78.
Oh, really rough, Jimmy.
No, but the funny thing about it is, to build the aircraft, which started flying in the early 80s, they're still flying them.
Is that right?
Yeah, the CP-140 Aurora has been upgraded, but it's still flying.
Built well, ready to go for a long time.
And then we went from
So how long did Air Force Freddy, as he's affectionately known in our world, makes his way down to California? How long are you there for?
We were there a year and a half, and then halfway through grade 9, we moved to CFB Greenwood, Nova Scotia, because my dad and all the other personnel there were going to be the instructors for the personnel transitioning from the old aircraft to the new aircraft. We were there 2.5 years. Then we moved to Camp Borden, which is near Barrie, Ontario. Mm-hmm. And then my dad's final posting with Downsview.
So he's right here in Toronto.
Right. And then my parents ended up retiring to St. Catharines and ended up at a senior's home in Nova Scotia. So along the way in all my journey, I thought about writing, but I never took any formal writing because I thought, because I went to the radio stream at Humber College.
Yes, okay. That's, I think, where we pick up our connection is Humber College here in Toronto, which had a vibrant radio program at the time.
Yes, started in 72.
And some great names made their way through that program as teachers and as students, and came out the other side of some of the broadcasters that you know and love today.
What happened was, over my journey in broadcasting, in radio and television, I ended up at Rogers Sportsnet. And a few years into it, they started their website. And they realized, up until when they started, they were just taking CP and AP wire copy. They had they said, the bosses said, well, you need some original Canadian content.
Yeah.
Like everything else in Canada. And they asked me in 2003, would I be interested in writing some blogs? I go, well, I haven't written much, but I'll try. So I started really small and then started doing more and more. Then after about 10 years, I was writing longer and longer and became more of my work routine. Now, I wasn't making any extra money, but I really got into it. And Ian Mendez, who I used to work with, is now with the Ottawa Senators, had written a book. And his agent was always looking for new writers. He suggested me and Brian Wood. He's still my agent to this day, my literary agent. And then we started exploring book options. And the first thing I did basically a 25,000 word ebook We shopped it around to publishers. They didn't want it, so we published it as an ebook, and then we used that as basically like a portfolio.
Right. Here's what I can do.
Yeah,
in
this
writing.
is what I can do. Correct. And
when did that pick up for you? You're at Sportsnet at the time, and what are you doing on the air at Sportsnet while you're also doing this?
I'm anchoring and reporting. I'm traveling around. And so what happened was when you
hold on, I want to illustrate this for 1 second. A lot of broadcasters out there, they go and they do their broadcast work, and they go to black. As they cut to black, they go home. They're in their car, 30 seconds later. And this is, I want to point this out as we get to know you a little bit, because I mean, I know that I can dig a little deeper on you, and people will get an idea. You are the least lazy broadcaster I've met in my life. You will do a morning show for radio. You will then show up here, for example, and do 2 interviews in a day. Go home, continue writing on your next book, and be there at the radio station the next morning for 5 a.m., 5:30 in the morning. So this is not your typical life. And back at Sportsnet, there you are, anchoring, doing coverage, traveling, and still this new medium of blogging, essentially.
Yes, correct.
You start to embrace as a writer almost right away when they ask you to do it. This became a gradual thing, but it's kind of your personality, Jim, to, if I can do it and I have the energy to do it, I will do it. But not only will I do it, I will do it as the best I can, which I think is admirable. It's what I like about you as a friend, frankly. But I think it's what's also helped you make these transitions. You start in radio. Where did your radio career start?
Well, it started at CKBB in Barrie doing the all-night show.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
What were you guys playing then?
It was just like a top 40, and then they'd have some different music, and it was a full service community station. They had an oldie show. 1 hour we would do a top 10 countdown and stuff like that. And it was my introduction to Canadian radio. That was back in 87, 88.
Why is it we all look at our first radio job and we all kind of grimace and laugh a little bit? My first station was The Can, CKAN. I worked at The Can.
I've heard of that. Where was that?
In your hometown, buddy. Newmarket, Ontario.
That's right.
1280. But yeah, so you start out there, and how do you get out of Barrie?
What happened was, after about a year and a half, I was living. I was only making $11,000 a year, and so I couldn't afford to live my own yet. So the typical Canadian radio.
Gotcha.
And I was living at home. My dad got transferred to Camp Downsview from CP Borden to CP Downsview. And I thought my car at the time would not make the drive from Downsview to Barrie in the winter. Like I'll die driving. So I said to work, if I can get $2,000 more a year, if you can bump my salary to $13,000, I figure out a way to live my own. And they said, yeah, we can't do that. Yeah, right. So I had to put my radio career on pause, and I worked different jobs and for a couple of years. And then I got laid off at a job and given unemployment. And I went to a place I had done an internship. And I said, look, I have unemployment. I will work 7 days a week. Don't have to pay me. I don't care. And so I did that for 8 months for no money.
Where was that?
At Q107.
Wow.
And I did everything. I was the bear mascot.
Jim, that's a really admirable thing on your resume.
Yeah. So I was, they had a station, like a big, it was a big, like you see in the amusement park, a bear. Yeah. And they had 2 stations, an AM and an FM, and they would change the t-shirts depending on what station event. And I would be like, wave to the kids and, like walk Jim. Around. And the first couple times I was the bear mascot, it was outside. It wasn't so bad. But the next time was in Port Credit Mall, Mississauga. And Don Cherry's Grapevine used to have this Irish Canadian guy named Jimmy Loftus, who was the bartender, and he would tell a tall tale. And he was hosting a St. Patrick's Day event in this mall, and they had me go there. Well, the mall heat, when I took the head off afterwards, I was like, it was like 5 rounds with Mike Tyson. I was like, I could barely, I don't know how they do it in Orlando at Disney.
I can't wait for the AI thumb that we pull up for this episode of you in your mascot suit. With the smoke hanging out of your mouth. Okay, so now you're at Q107 for a period of time. How do you end up in the paid role? I'm sorry, I'm taking you right through the career here, but I think it's fascinating for people to know how you end up an author. It's a life experience. So now you're at Q107 and you need to get paid and gainfully employed. What happens?
So 2 weeks before my last unemployment check, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do because it runs out 2 weeks. They go, hey, we're going to take you on salary. We're going to pay you 15 grand. I was like, yes.
Yes, I can afford to go back to Barrie.
And so I was producing John Derringer's afternoon drive show, the 6 o'clock rock report, helping the music department, helping promotions and helping and doing whatever I could. And for that, I ended up going to Chaume FM Montreal.
That's when Derringer made the move to Montreal?
And there I was producing and doing on air.
Right.
And then in 95, I ended up moving back to work at The Fan. And that's where my sports media career really started. Now, the sports was always my first love, but when I broke in, there was no sports radio in Canada and basically no sports television.
Now, who were you working for at The Fan? Who was the program director at the time?
It was 2 program directors. The first one was Bob Makowitz Sr., who...
Iconic. That's where I was going.
One of the best of the best. And then it was Nelson Millman.
Also iconic.
Also iconic.
So you had 2 of the best leaders in broadcast in Canada, probably in history.
Yeah. And then, so I was really lucky that way. And then I ended up working with guys like Pat Marsden,
right,
and a broadcast legend and different people. And I was just talking about it with someone today because of the CBC story. My first real big sports assignment after doing things here and there, I had to cover Leafs training camp in September of 95, which was at Maple Leaf Gardens. And I was, a junior radio reporter with a record machine and a microphone with the mic flash on it. And there was, local TV reporters, local beat reporters. But CBC Hockey Night in Canada showed up to shoot some feature stories with Pat Burns, who was the coach at the time, and Doug Gilmour.
Yep.
And we were both laughing that it was like the Red Sea party when the Hockey Night in Canada crew, because at the time, in the mid-90s, Hockey Night in Canada, the producers, the talent, the techs, Don Cherry and all of them, they were godlike.
Oh, they were superstars.
That's why today's news about the end of Hockey Night in Canada really hits me, because when I started, my first scrum, I had a question for Pat Burns, but I knew enough not to ask it because there was the crusty old beat writers, the beat reporters from the newspapers who were around in the 60s when the Leafs won in 67, and here 30 years later, they're still covering the team.
That's a tough scrum to get in on.
So you basically, you have to be really an active listener. So, okay, they ask a question, and then you could see there's an opening. And I remember asking Pat Burns a question, and he's kind of gruff and goes, that's a good question. Well, my heart's like, and so you knew scrum etiquette. You're like,
right,
okay, you defer to the senior reporters and that, make sure they get their questions, and then you would you would ask your question and get your sound and stuff like that. And so that was the foundation, getting to know players, getting to know coaches, getting to know people, the media, starting 31 years ago. And you develop relationships and networking that led up to writing books and writing stuff.
So now, leading up to this, you say, you weren't much of a writer before you started blogging, but the one thing that I do notice about you, Jim, and over the years, I've always really enjoyed this in our conversations, is you have the ability to file facts from history, the way things happened with an accuracy, but still a flourish to understand it in a storytelling sense. Have you always had that? Is that something you got in school, or is that just in your nature?
It's both. I enjoyed history in school, and I still enjoy history to this day. And so it's my nature. I really didn't like sciences and math.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of time for it. I like English, but history fascinated me. Like, what happened? Where did we come from? How did this happen? This day in history, because this happened, then that happened, and that happened.
Were you a jock? Were you into sports? Because that was your thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always played beer league and, station. Most of the stations had a hockey team. I still play hockey to this day, and, fit and active and stuff like that. And so eventually, you start learning more. You start learning your craft about being a broadcaster, being a reporter. And part of it, and I learned this from Bob McKenzie, working on him with Everyday Hockey Heroes, it's not so much what you ask, it's what you don't ask. And you are being judicious about what information you get out there and what you don't. Because you could throw everything out there, but that coach, that player, that agent may never speak to you again.
Right.
Because you betrayed them.
Yeah, you have to have a certain amount of decorum
Exactly.
that is, I guess, humanity based.
Right.
But
So
you have to be a human about
they
what
are
you're
human
doing.
beings.
Yeah.
Right. They have good days and bad days. They have physical and mental health issues like anyone else. And they have families and stuff like that. So that was understanding, learning that on the way, what you report on, how you report on it, what you say and what you don't say. And it's all, I think in any job, Mike, whatever career path, you learn constantly. You're always learning. You're always, because the technology changes. I mean, now I can shoot a story with an iPhone, which was unheard of before. You had a camera with a beta tape in it, and the editing and filing was so complicated. You needed a satellite truck on site, which cost huge money in a 15-minute window. And now we can do stuff like and just file it.
And you know what's interesting to me, Jim, is just as a sideline on that, in the era where you had to put in all that effort, there was real direction. There was real focus on the questions. There wasn't, you weren't in a mix of 100 million posts online, for example, on TikTok.
No.
You actually had a moment on television where people were tuned in. It was important that you asked good questions, that you got good interaction. That professionalism, I think, with the phone is starting to deteriorate dramatically. We don't get the same storytelling. We don't get the same thoughtful questions. We get more provocation than
Exactly.
intellect, I think, in a lot of cases.
And that's my passion for doing the books. And you mentioned all the different things I do. I do it because I love it. And I cherish and appreciate every day. I have experienced a lot of good friends in the business over the years, be let go for whatever contractual reasons, or they were downsizing and all that. So I cherish every day. I'm here every day. I'm doing something in the business. And as you said about the iPhone, I also think it's very special to tell stories beyond a short clip on a TikTok or an Instagram, because you can't tell a story in a 30, 60-second soundbite. That's not possible. And so to actually, get to know a human being who happened to play hockey or coach hockey or was the general manager, you hear their story, and it's not always a smooth path.
No.
It's not always a direct line from growing up playing hockey to being a champion. And it's learning all the different things along the way they had to overcome physically and mentally that I'm fascinated by that.
Well, it's so interesting. In talking to you, you point out, okay, I worked in Barrie, and then I had to take a break from broadcasting and actually have a different way of making money.
Yeah.
I never knew that about you, Jim.
Yeah.
So it's these moments where you actually take a few seconds and have a discussion with somebody. And I think that's probably what you appreciate. And you can tell me about the writing process as well. Let's talk a little bit about that before we get to your most recent book with Rod Black. First of all, who have you written with?
Okay, I'll run it down. I've done 9 books. So I've done Ty Domi, Wendell Clark. I've done 2 books with Bob McKenzie on Everyday Hockey Heroes Volume 1 and 2. Rod Black, Brian Berard, Max Domi, and then this one was all me, My Day with the Cup. And so, so I'm at the point where I'm writing books just solo,
on your own,
I'm also collaborating. So I do both. It depends what opportunity there is and what the story is and that. I wasn't expecting to work with Rod because I was working on another book that fingers crossed, is out next spring.
Okay.
And they approached me and said, look, we have a client who's well past their due date, is having trouble meeting the deadlines. The one thing...
Rod Black's going to be thrilled to hear this.
Well, no, he knows. He knows. The problem is Rod does at least 100 events a year.
Oh, my God.
Corporate events, charity events.
Golf tournaments.
Awards.
Right.
Yeah, 100 times a year. And he has a family. And he also does freelance play-by-play for the Canadian Elite Basketball League.
Right. Okay.
And what happens is, with all the travel and moving around, like he'd start and stop and go, look, I said, who was it with? And they said, Rod Black. I go, I've known Rod 25 years. We can do this. Don't worry.
Oh, fantastic.
Because I could get him going from the hotel to the rink or the rink to the airport, and that's how we did it.
And it's comfortable because you already had that relationship.
Yeah, and then we would meet for breakfast a couple times, and we finished the book at the Swiss Chalet in Newmarket.
Well done. Well done. Classy place.
Oh, love the
I'm glad
quarter
he didn't take you for sushi. I know you don't like
No,
that.
I don't like sushi.
But this is wild to me. I really admire, by the way, I throw around that I have an author friend quite often, but these hit the bestseller. These books are based on popular topics. And the book, My Day with the Cup, just an outstanding thing for a friend of yours to see happen because the response to it was really big.
Yeah.
Everyday Hockey Heroes 1 and 2, both of them had that same response. So you're writing and helping these people convey their stories is having a really cool effect. How does that feel for you? What's the effect on you?
It's to be able to tell someone's story it's the ultimate. It's worth more than any money I make doing the book. It means everything. And I remember, I've had people, involved with the books over the years, and they'll text you things, and that's the ultimate. And they're doing it because they appreciated what you did for them, because they know they're like they have a story. They can, sometimes we can't verbalize everything, but you can read it and understand it. And a family member and a friend, and you're like, oh, I get it. Like, because
you reframed that. So I now understand that better. And it was in my reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what happens is we have the moment, and then when you reflect on it and you're like, oh, actually, and then so what we'll do often is I'll reach out to other people and get their perspective.
Right.
And then I say, well, actually, and then we compare notes, and then it triggers different things in the memory. So sometimes, whether it's working with the people we did with Everyday Hockey Heroes, working with Wendell Clark, working with Rod, whoever it was, we revisit the same thing 2 or 3 times because different doors of your memory gets opened up.
Right.
And then you paint a better picture.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It makes, and when you open one of those doors, it takes you down another rabbit hole. Oh, and by the way, that guy, I can see that. So now, Rod Black, the book is out. And
The book it came out in May.
What are we finding out? What kind of outstanding moments do you think? And what's the overall story that people get from a little bit of a history on Rod Black?
He is a working class, middle class kid from a working class neighborhood in the East End of Winnipeg. Loved sports, but got into DJing at a roller rink in Winnipeg in the 70s. He had a big curly hair. He looked like Leo Sayer.
Nice.
And he was into playing basketball and all these different sports, and was not a dedicated student, but they had the Red River Community College, which is like the equivalent of a community college like the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology or Humber College in Rexdale. Mm-hmm. And he took their creative CRECOM, they call it, creative communications course. And from that, you'd have broadcasters, writers, producers, and that. Now he's 19, not even 20, in his second year. And they find out there's an opening for a sports reporter at the local CTV affiliate, CKY. And everyone's like, Rod, you got to go. He goes, what?
Pretty big job.
And so he gets it.
Wow.
He's 19 going on 20, and he's working at CKY Winnipeg. And that's basically his life in the 80s is doing sports, anchoring, covering the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the Jets. There was a boxer from Winnipeg called Donnie Lalonde, the Golden Boy, who had some big fights. He traveled to New York City and met Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen because they were watching. They were big into boxing. So all of a sudden, here's this kid from Winnipeg, and he's in New York City at a boxing gym. The crusty old cigars. Come on, Wixson, punch that guy. And
big part of my history.
Yeah. And along the way, he was tabbed by CTV to do some of their national stuff. All the while, very happy living in Winnipeg. That was his life, and doing charity events, and because he's a Winnipeg guy, Manitoba guy. And then he had an opportunity to work for CTV National Sports. And he moves to Toronto, and he's roommates with Dave Ellett and Dave McElwain in the NHL, who play for the Leafs because they used to play for the Jets. And then let's all live together. And it's one of my favorite stories is
what a scene that is.
So a couple of years later, they're all bachelors, live in this apartment, and Pat Burns it's a great part of the book, leaves him a profanity-laced voicemail to make sure his effing defenseman gets some effing sleep for this effing playoff game. Don't keep him out all night. Hang up.
That's awesome. They knew what the lifestyle was.
Yeah.
He knew.
He goes, my man needs some sleep. Don't keep him out. Hang up.
Wow.
Because broadcasting in sports in the early 90s, mid 90s was very different. You know, you would have writers, reporters, and athletes having a drink together.
Yeah.
No one thought anything of it.
There was a place in Toronto called The Pilot, as I recall. And I don't know if it's still there, but it seemed to be where everybody in broadcast and sports got together. They would all, it was an even playing field. There was a few places.
There was a few of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And pre-cell phone, pre-internet, people didn't take photos of people in a pub or a bar. You were just a couple people having a drink and going out. There was nothing, you know, it was very different that way. And so Rod, and then over the years, covering different sports, covering the Blue Jays World Series runs of 92, 93, got into the Olympics.
I noticed the forward is Joe Carter.
Joe Carter was fantastic to talk to, and they became friends from his time covering the Blue Jays. And then when Rod was broadcasting the Blue Jays, Joe was doing color commentary with him. And actually, one of the quotes in the back is from Charles Barkley. And Charles called while I was here in the podcast studio, and he's exactly like you would imagine. And at the end, he's like, Jim, we should go for a beer together. You sound like a good guy. And I'm like, Charles, I'd love to go for a beer with you.
Here. What?
So I hope I can make that happen. But, you know, reaching out to Lisa LaFlamme, because they work together in Canada AM, and different people, they immediately got back because the kind of person.
He was beloved.
A professional broadcaster. He did actually what I didn't know. He did a lot of trips to Africa for Planned Canada.
Oh, I remember this group, yes.
And they would film videos and do the infomercials. And he said there was a few of them, but like they would get on the plane and they were getting out of Dodge with the local rebels coming. And like, he had some traumatic experiences that took a while to get over, Rod said. Like, you think they're just there in a village talking to kids, and it's not always that way.
I think people don't realize that broadcast takes you in 1 million directions throughout your career that are really remarkable. You know, it's interesting to me that all these years later, by the way, Jim Lang is the most employed broadcaster in Canadian history. He may have taken a break after Barry, but you've never taken a break thereafter.
No.
You've been in the business running over 30 years now, and your energy to do it, even here with us on a weekly basis.
I love it.
You love it. And,
I do. I love it.
The storytelling and all of that. What I think is really great for you is that you get to really hone in that investigative interview style of yours with these books and take us to new places about people that we just didn't know and anything about them on certain topics. And
I've known Rod 25 years, but then I didn't know this, and this. I didn't know, all his family story, the trials and tribulations of traveling so much because he was on the road a lot as a broadcaster. I didn't know the real story about the end of his time as a broadcaster and how difficult that was emotionally and mentally, and how he had to rebound and reinvent himself. And there are so many people in this country, and it's happened to me in different places I worked at where I was told you're no longer welcome. I'm like, well, I got to reinvent myself. I got to do something else. And as a Canadian, the longer you work in whatever field, you probably will have an experience where you're going to have a job that you like come to an end you didn't expect or didn't hope it come to an end, and you have to figure something out to pay the bills.
Co-authoring 9 books, 30 years plus in the biz, and going strong. The new book is Cut to Black, Rod Black, co-written with Jim Lang. There it is there. Just in time for Father's Day. I'm going to recommend you get it. We'll put the link in the description, and you'll find Jim Lang here with us many times a week. I just want to say, I wrote Everyday Hockey Heroes with Bob McKenzie a few years ago. They're going to re-release it as a paperback at the end of October. Okay. I found that out. Just in time for Christmas? And this My Day with the Cup, I just wanted to bring this up. So it's a tradition that's unique to the NHL. In the NHL, when you win the Stanley Cup, it's starting in 95, they had an official tour. Every player and coach and team member, they get a day with the Stanley Cup. Yeah, I know. I got my day. Yeah. And so whether you're in Abbotsford, BC, or you're in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, or you're in
Moncton or Laval, Quebec, there might be an athlete from your area or a team member, a staff member from the Carolina Hurricanes who will have their day with the cup, and all of a sudden they're having a day with the cup, and it's in your town and in your community, and it's something so unique to hockey and the NHL. And that I was a real labor of love putting this together. And
there's some wild stories.
Yeah.
This is a great book. Even if you just want to know how abused the poor cup has been over the years.
Well, to that end, they have 3 cups.
I've heard this, yeah.
They have one that never leaves the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Right.
Because the presentation cup, the cup that goes out on the ice when they win, that goes to the bars, when they celebrate, that goes to the day, it has been repaired over the years a few times.
Well, I'm sure.
And then they have a third cup that has all the same names because sometimes
it ends up at the bottom of your pool?
Well, no. So they may have their day with the cup with Mike Wixson, and all of a sudden they need it for a huge event that's happening in Winnipeg.
Okay.
So they'll send one of when they have the keeper of the cup, they have a whole staff of people. And our man Bish,
Dave Bishop
did it for a while.
Yep.
And he can attest to that all of a sudden Dave Bishop, great guy, great comedian.
Stanley Cup Mike was the other guy that was doing it for a period of time there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so they will go around and they show up at 7:50 in the morning, spend all day with the player or the coach or the team member, and they're going to hospitals. They're having charity days. They're seeing, for the most part, a lot of the players, the only time they ever saw their dad cry is when they opened the case and put the Stanley Cup up on the kitchen table.
So I'll tell you a story. I can't remember. It was Tampa Lightning, a guy from Barrie. Can't remember who it was.
Well, you're really narrowing it down.
Tampa. He's from Barrie. Anyway, the cup came to Barrie.
Yes.
I was asked to put together an event that was sizable. All of Barrie came out to see this. And at that event,
2004, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
But you don't know the player's name, Jim?
I'm not off the top of my head, no.
But it'll come to me. But essentially, it was a big day.
It is
in
a big
day. Kim Mitchell came and played a concert.
Oh, yeah.
At that event, I witnessed George Stroumboulopoulos and from CFRB, our man, evening guy.
Jim Richards.
Jim Richards.
The legend.
Jim Richards.
I worked with him a one
fashionable
time.
Guy.
Yeah.
Drinking from the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
And it was just a glorious moment. It is a big deal, the Stanley Cup. I recommend the book and all the books. If you're a sports fan or you've got a sports fan in your life, Jim Lang puts his name and his effort into the books that make a difference for Canadian sports fans. Especially
with summer coming for Canadians. I write them that they're easy to read. Because I don't talk like I'm Stephen King or anything. I'm not going to write like him. So I'm going to write
on behalf of all guys. Thank you.
I write it in a way that I know I could read it and everyone can read it and digest it. And you can read a chapter here, a chapter there. But it's good summer reads, and especially Father's Day coming up for Cut to Black, Indigo, Amazon.ca, wherever you get your books.
Something you never hear me end an interview with. Jim, I love you. You're the best. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for joining us. We love you as well. tplmedia.ca. tplmedia.ca/local, because we are probably doing something local in your hometown.
That's right.
And I'll recommend you go and check that out.
No one else is doing this. We are.
Jim Lang is here many days a week with great shows and great guests. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Looking for reliable and convenient personal safety products? Less Lethal has you covered. As Canada's only authorized Byrna distributor, we provide a range of products for recreation, protection, and security. Explore our Byrna launcher lineup, including the LE, SD, TCR, and Mission 4, designed for different levels of performance and protection needs. We also offer the Banshee personal safety alarm, designed to protect children, women, and vulnerable individuals. Because your safety is our top priority. Shop now at lesslethal.ca.